Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. It's about 10:15, so we're going to get started. This is room 8 for the cool projects Ferry and Rail presentations. We're going to be showing the PDHs at the end of each of these presentations, so you guys can get those afterwards. And I think we're going to get started. David Webb, ready to take it away.
All right, I tend to wander around. So welcome to Project Management at Sea, and I'm David Webb. I'm a team lead with the Project Management Unit. I help deliver projects for the Eastern Divisions of North Carolina, Divisions 1 through 4, and Division 6. One thing that I really like about PMU is that we've had a lot of diversity in our project portfolio over the years. Not only do we have large highway projects, but we've also got our project managers involved in some signal design projects. And most recently, we've inherited a lot of bridge projects. 3 of those we'll talk about today are ferry ramp replacements. One of them is in Division 1, 2 are in Division 2. And really, what I always tell my project managers is really dive into your project and learn who to ask questions to. If you don't know everything, that's fine. That's what our technical experts are for. That's what our consulting partners are for. Well, when it comes to ferry projects, a lot of us don't know exactly what's involved in that, and that's why we got Kat Peel with the Ferry Division and her staff that's always good to reach out to help design these projects. Kat is the Planning and Development Manager with the Ferry Division, and what I'm going to do is turn it over to her first, and then we'll talk about the projects as we go along. No.
All right, good morning. Some of you are former Ferry Division employees, so you already know my spiel, and you might have already seen a presentation similar to this, but our approach today is going to be very much interactive and back and forth between David and I. My role here is really to educate you about who the Ferry Division is and what we do, and what services we provide to Eastern North Carolina, and why they're so important. And then that integration between providing reliable service, but then these very important ramp projects that we have going on, and how they integrate together. So a little bit about the Ferry Division. We are the second largest state-operated ferry system in the country, right behind Washington DOT. We actually have the same number of vessels. They just move a lot more people than we do because their boats are bigger. We serve 7 different routes. So from the northeast corner of North Carolina, the Knott's Island, the Currituck route, to Southport and Fort Fisher. We span 3 different highway divisions. Probably all the highway division engineers from those areas are in the room today. A lot of close coordination in providing those services, talking about outages, emergency services. I think it's important to note during the presentation, especially with everything that's going on in Western North Carolina, some of these areas don't have drive-around options. If they do, sometimes those options are washed out. And so people's only option for service and getting good services, emergency services to those areas is the ferry division. We also have 23 boats, I already said that, but 11 different kind of fleet support fleet. What's the word I'm looking for? Not boats. Vessels. Anyways, vessels. Yeah, we have our own dredge, a couple tugs, and a crane barge as well to perform all the services. So it's not just about moving people on our ferries. There's a lot of action taking place behind the scenes to make that service actually work. So I like the kind of the picture of here's your duck with a bunch of feet underneath trying to make it go, right? It's going as fast as humanly possible to make this one little boat go across the river or the sound. And so we've got facility maintenance, we've got over 100 buildings, we've got marine maintenance, 24 ramps and gantry systems, dredging of 7 different state channels. We've got safety, security, human resources. You get a ferry and you get a ferry. We're all getting ferries. So it's not just the ferry operators. There's a whole support system that goes on that has to happen close in coordination to make those departures actually happen. Talked about this a little bit. That really I want to hit on is the emergency and disaster response on this one, especially given what's happened this past week, and the importance of having an option for a ramp that is reliable, in good working condition, and there's redundancy to make sure that we can provide emergency services to areas that might be cut off from the rest of the world. We do provide service specific to Ocracoke Island. You can reach that by 3 different routes. That's it. Unless you have your own helicopter or your private plane, or you are the governor or the Army National Guard, you're using us to get to where you need to be, and also taking everything off the island that has been destroyed. So specifically thinking about Hurricane Dorian and what that looked like, the mounds of trash that had to be removed, there's a great picture out there of the mounds of refrigerators that we had to get off the island, the damaged and just completely totaled vehicles from the flood waters. And so we have to make sure that we are in good working order. We do really well at emergency services, but that someone can rely on us to provide back to them. Go ahead. So we talked a little bit about emergency services, but what else do we provide to North Carolina? Time travel savings. So some of our routes might take 30 minutes to go across the water, but it's an hour and 10 minutes to drive around. Much easier just to hop on the ferry and get to your workplace. And then safety benefits. Knock on wood, and not sinking any boats anytime soon. So you kind of take that risk factor away of being on the actual roadway compared to the ferry, and then you're saving that wear and tear on vehicles and on the roadways as well. What we want to hit home on this as well while we're talking about the ramp projects is a lot of stakeholder engagement. And that's going to look very different for each of the ramp projects that we talk about today, because each route has a very specific use, and it's different. So Hatteras to Ocracoke, tourism, right? We're providing those services to mainly tourists getting to Ocracoke Island for their summer vacation, have a great time. A lot of freight as well, but that's like a 92% is visitors. Same thing for Cedar Island to Ocracoke and Swan Quarter to Ocracoke. But on the flip side, when you look at commuter routes like Aurora and Bayview or Cherry Branch and Minnesota Beach, they're just trying to get to work. That's the primary use for those. So David has some great points about who's going where and why, but Cherry Branch to Minnesota Beach, a lot of folks are just trying to reach the Cherry Point military base. And so the communication to them is going to be a little bit different, and our strategy is going to be different compared to a tourism-based route. And just a little bit of just data and analytics here about why people are using the routes. You know, we have the Currituck route, primarily school use, to get from the Knott's Island side over to Currituck mainland. Just the point here is thinking robustly about how we engage with our customers to make sure we're clear about the project delivery timelines, and the best way to engage with them. If you've never been on a ferry, I wanted to add some pictures. Some people are, a ferry? What do you like, a winged ferry or like a thing? No, it's a floating vessel. So the top right picture is Southport, Fort Fisher. I couldn't find the best picture of our paint booth. We have our own shipyard in Mans Harbor. It's one of the largest on the East Coast that's state-owned. So when a boat comes out of water, like you're seeing in the picture on the left, there's a very dedicated schedule that's U.S. Coast Guard mandated, but our team does all of that. And so it comes out of the water, we sandblast, pressure wash, rebuild engines, prop shafts, repaint the whole thing, you name it, we do it. And so I encourage you, if you ever want to go to the shipyard in Mans Harbor, give me a call. Happy to take you around and see what it's all about. It's really you turn right at the tattoo shop in Mans Harbor, and we're at the end of the road. So not everyone knows that we're there. Okay. I'm going to go really quickly through these because I've talked a lot about this already. A lot of this information is the same, but just wanted, for those of you unaware of where these routes are, so Northeast North Carolina, the Currituck-Knox Island route, primarily used by school children, really focusing in on this ferry crossing time versus an alternative route by car, and then honing in on there's not always that option. Then Hatteras to Ocracoke, again, 82%, not 92, like I said earlier, for visitors. This is our highest density route, so 440,000 passengers. We're around 1.5 million passengers a year. A lot of environmental challenges in this area, and so we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to try and accommodate those in future ramp projects. The other option to access Ocracoke is Swan Quarter and then Cedar Island. Those two routes are pretty long, so 2 hours and 15 minutes, a pretty long way. So the differences in classes here, the shorter routes, kind of shallow water, more protected inland a little bit, are a little bit of a smaller vessel, but when you're on these sound routes for Swan Quarter and Cedar Island, a much larger vessel, can carry more people, different design, and so we'll talk about how we're going to accommodate that into the ferry projects, ramp projects as well. David is the expert on technical things, so I will be handing it over to him.
No pressure, thank you. So this is BR 170. This is the replacement of Bridge 114 and 115 on NC 12, ferry over Silver Lake. So this project's in Division 1, Hyde County. Here's a little snapshot of the project schedule. LET is a few years away. Right now, the consultant's working on the categorical exclusion document. That's due next summer. And the two stars there, those are the two ramps we're looking at replacing for this project. Just wanted to point out the structures that you see out in the water, kind of that V shape. Those are called dolphins. They're basically pilings tied together. They guide the ships into the location to come up to the ramp, and they're also for tying off the boats. So this project, like I said, is kind of in the early stages in the planning process, but BR 170, there are a few key highlights I want to bring up. You know, just like any project that we design, you're going to have some of the same constraints. You've got utilities. You're going to have, you know, your aerial, underground utilities, your water, your septic. And, you know, those things you deal with on a regular basis. But when we're out here looking at this particular project, you know, we had a field scoping meeting, and, you know, we took the ferry over 2 hours, 15 minutes, and skies were blue like this, and as soon as we got there, it started raining. So luckily there was a picnic shelter we were able to gather around, and it was really good. We had all the stakeholders there. We had National Park Service, I believe. We had the Corps. Our consulting partners were there. You know, Division 1 was there as well. So we were able to just really talk about the issues on the site. And, you know, both of those ramps are going to be replaced, but we wanted to talk about the potential to maybe rehab one ramp before we even replace the other one. And that comes back to the redundancy, wanting to make sure that if there's a hurricane, if we need to get someone off the island, we have a ramp that is functional at the time. We can't afford to have any downtime here. We got to make sure we design the ramps to not only take the current vessel class, but any potential future vessels. So making sure that we think about that, you know, what's going to happen in the future. Also thinking about future things like sea level rise. That's very important when we design these ramps. Flooding is always a concern in eastern North Carolina. In the queuing lanes for the cars, we did notice there has been some ponding issues. We'll take care of that during construction and design. Make sure that that's all, you know, fixed. We do have two historical structures. So this one here is like the North Carolina Advanced Teaching Building, Center for Advanced Teaching. And then there's actually a historical cistern on site. Both of those things, we'll be able to work around them, but it's going to be part of the planning document that we need to address. During construction as well, making sure we don't damage those structures is important. Probably do some vibratory monitoring during construction. Geotech will help out with that. All these coastal areas, you've got endangered species populations in the area. Also, dealing with different moratoriums. We're going to have to time our construction during the right time of the year. The National Park Service actually owns the land here, and they're going to require a special use permit for any construction activities. And I think one of the bigger things that I find interesting is we all drive by construction sites every day, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. You have a captive audience here. So people are parked here waiting for the ferry. It's going to be even more important to make sure we have a good staging area. The area's got to be secure. We've got to make sure that everything is safe. We've got pedestrians walking around. I call these, quote, inspectors. Everybody's got a cell phone and an opinion. So, DOT is going to be in the limelight. Everybody's looking. So it's really important that we have a good contractor on board. Going back to, trying to time the construction, there are a lot of special events in the area. I know there's a pirate festival in October. There's always a big celebration at New Year's in Ocracoke. So it's just a lot of coordination that's going to be required. And one more thing that we found out is I think Ocracoke's replacing their water tower in 2025. So getting all of that equipment over and making sure that, we have everything in place to, maintain those ramps. Barge access is a big thing. We got to make sure if we're putting in those dolphins, the pilings, that if we're doing the work by barge, that we're not blocking the navigational channel. So just a lot of things to consider during this project, and I look forward to working with the consultant to keep it moving.
And this is no offense to our lovely friends on Ocracoke, but if you've ever had a nosy neighbor, they are very aware of what's happening, what should be happening in their minds, and so they're quick to pull those phones out, which has been helpful in the past for some projects. They are kind of our boots on the ground, like you said, our inspectors, and so we've gotten some reports of, hey, there was a little bit of a blow this weekend with some high winds. There does seem to be some trash around, because I can't be there every day. My staff can't be there every day, and so it can have a benefit, but it can also be definitely need a good contractor on site to make sure everything is very well in order. So the next place we're going to go is Aurora Bayview, which we call Pamlico River because it goes over the Pamlico River. And so more inland, more protected, not as out there in the ocean for hurricanes. There is a drive-around option, but it can be lengthy. And so a 30-minute ferry crossing can turn into a 70-minute drive around. This route specifically is, again, for commuters trying to access the Aurora side for the phosphate plant that's over there. And so for this project, while we have one ramp, we want to have two. So the goal here is to rehab the old and build new. We want to have that redundancy. So if one is ever down, we really strive. One of our performance metrics is successful departures compared to our published schedule. So we want to make sure that we're still meeting that. So the goal during this will be limited downtime, working with the partners so that they know when they can get to work and what impacts will be to their schedule. But then also a great result, hopefully, of having two ramps at each side of these locations for any redundancy needs.
So this project is BR6, replace bridges 321 and 322 on NC 306 over the Pamlico Sound. Another snapshot of the schedule, working on getting toward the CE document by summer of next year. Let date's a little bit further out on this one. This photo shows a vessel leaving Bayview, and we've got quite a few alternatives that we've gone through an alternatives analysis. We've got a selection of preferred alternatives, so I'm going to just kind of walk through the different things we looked at, but we're going to start on the Aurora side. So like Kat was saying, all of these alternatives will show a rehab option of the existing ramp, but this particular one, we want to look at building the new ramp to the west with a 50-foot space in between the structures. That will require modifying the dolphins that you see there in the photo or in the aerial photo. So really, this one's not a big change from what's existing, and it's relatively easy to look at these two alternatives and make a selection. This one, we're losing some of the storage in that lane, as we go further west. And we're separating the bathrooms from the shelters that are out there now. So just kind of looking at these two options, alternate one was ultimately what we selected. So this was the easy side. Bayview was a little more complicated because that building with the brown roof, that's actually a house. So that's a private residence right beside where the existing ramp is today. Not sure who got there first. There you go. This drive around option is a little bit of an impact to that property. Still, we wanted to look at it. You know, we got some of the deeper water on that side, and this alternative ultimately was not selected, but we just wanted to look at different options. This alternative also was not selected, but we wanted to look at taking the new ramp to the east, and we would run through the existing parking lot there. But the problem with this is you've already got a seawall right there, and you're kind of stuck out on a peninsula, and it really just kind of puts the vessel out there a little more exposed to the elements, worrying about, you know, the propellers just causing more erosion potential at the seawall. Ultimately, we did not choose this alternative. One thing that I found interesting after talking to Kat is we have operational challenges here. That small building by the existing ramp is the ferry office, and the operators need to be able to see the vessels as they come in. So the line of sight would actually change with this option, and you'd have to get a, what's the special permit called?
The Coast Guard security plan.
The security plan, yep, that would have to be updated. So it's good to know these things. I would have never thought about the security plan having to be updated, just moving the ramp to the east like that. And here was another east option, but this was a really big impact to the parking for DOT. It went through the middle parking lot. It split the shelter and the ferry office. You know, just wanted to look at another option here. We're a little bit closer to that seawall, so we didn't know if erosion was going to be a concern or not. So ultimately, here are the photos to give you a better view. If you go to the top right, that would be where we looked at alternative 3, and ultimately did not choose that option. The little peninsula is on the bottom right, and that would have been kind of having the ferry out in the open a little bit more. And we do have a private residence you see in the background, and they've already complained about erosion on their property, so probably a good idea to avoid that option. And then the one where it looks like we're leaving straight from the existing ramp gives you a little bit view of that house to the left, and the image on the top is right in front of that house. So we got some septic tanks there. I think we can avoid those with the last option, but we are going to look at going right beside the existing ramp. So this would be an impact to the property, but not as great of an impact. They've got a metal canopy there for a carport that can be relocated. We can make sure they still have a driveway. The dolphins will have to be reconfigured because we will be close together, kind of that 50-foot separation like we saw at the other location. But ultimately, this was the alternative that is the preferred.
And sometimes the options just don't look good, right? And so we wanted to make sure something looked clean, consistent. Utilities are a factor in being able to have a fuel reel available to fuel the vessels, power, water, wastewater, everything that needs to come on and off the boat. And so having them together makes it a little bit easier for our crews to be able to provide that service. So our next project is down at Minnesota Beach. So it's part of our Cherry Branch to Minnesota Beach route. We talked about this one a little bit already, but really primarily 80% of the ridership is permanent residents going back and forth to work, not just Cherry Point Military Base, but that is a large employer in the area. And then David will talk about this as well. There are several YMCA camps on the Minnesota Beach side. And so residents, camp kids, it's a very busy route. We have, it's almost, I think it's either 58 or 64 departures a day in total from this specific location. So they're cruising all day, every day. And so again, wanting to have, we have 2 ramps already. We're doing a rehab and a rebuild. So we have that redundancy already. So this is kind of the easier of all the projects, I would say, because you already have that existing infrastructure. But to David's point of, you got a lot of eyes, and you got a lot of concerns about any kind of downtime and impacts to schedule.
So anybody from the Raleigh area, have you been to Camp Seagull or Camp Seafair if you have kids and Y Guides? I think I did 6 years. So 6 years going to Minnesota Beach area, Arapahoe, North Carolina. And like you said, we got 2 ferry ramps here. We're only looking at replacing Bridge 78 on the NC 306 ferry over the Neuse River. Division 2 project, should have mentioned that, just like the last one. Project milestones, Raleigh-Let 2026. Right now, working on the NEPA document. That should be completed in February of next year. So we're getting a little bit closer to having that wrapped up. Really, some of the highlights here is to, replace that eastern ramp along with the bulkhead. We had some underwater surveys, investigations. The inspections came back showing that we do need to replace that bulkhead. To what extent, we're still working on that. The elevation of the ramp and the approaches here are going to be raised. If you look at that bottom right picture here, you see kind of a darker pavement area. Water just kind of sits there, and we want to be able to eliminate some of those flooding concerns and really nuisance flooding. And then the shared dolphin replacement, it may impact traffic to the western ramp because these are so close together. Those dolphins in the middle, as we replace the ramp on the east side, we may have to have a little bit of downtime to make sure we get that done in a proper fashion. We have aerial and underground utilities that may be impacted with this project, potentially a sturgeon moratorium as well. And just like the other ones, considerations during construction include a secure staging area, timing of special events. There's a Cherry Point Air Show that we have to work around. And then obviously hurricane evacuations and the barge access for putting in the dolphins. I will say that as we've worked through these projects, we're all kind of learning some things. I'm learning a lot about the mechanics of these sites, and the mechanical and electrical side of things that maybe new is not always better. And I think there's some lessons learned that you want to touch on, maybe.
Well, bringing this in, I was talking to John Abel about this. I feel like I inherited a project that won't ever go away. But if you go back to Minnesota, most of our ramps look like this picture right here. You've got cables, shivs, some counterweights, an overhead beam structure. You turn the system on, you hit the up button, it goes up. You hit the down button, it goes down. It's super easy. A lot of people can at least put their eyes on it and say, hey, I think you got this kind of issue, there's a leak here, this is what we're seeing. Easy to troubleshoot from a crew standpoint, and easy for us to fix from a marine maintenance standpoint. What we did, and it was a very good idea, there is no hard feelings about this, except if you're on my project management calls about it. I thought I had added a picture in here. Anyways, we did a redesign of the Southport Fort Fisher. Let's go with something a little bit different. Let's make it more reliable. We had a counterweight system that had failed. We had a project study done by H&H, and they had recommended, well, if you did this hydraulic system with some more electronics, it would be more resilient, and you would have less maintenance costs. And while very applicable in some certain circumstances, but when you're in the coast of North Carolina and you got a team that might not know a whole lot about PLCs and plugging laptops into computer systems and trying to diagnose sensors that are blinking red and why the heck is this happening, and Kat, please call somebody. And I don't know who to call either. Do you know who to call? I don't know who to call. So the goal of all of these projects now is to make it as simple as possible to operate and maintain. And if that's a cable change every couple years and a shift change every couple years, then so be it. But we want to make sure that our employees can troubleshoot, our employees can maintain, and we're not reliant upon an extremely expensive contractor in the middle of nowhere. These places are far away. So trying to call someone to respond quickly to Ocracoke Island is difficult in itself, without the burden of a hurricane or tropical storm beating down on you. So trying to take some risk out of all of this and make it a super simple system that is easy to maintain and operate. So everyone on my team has heard it. We are going with what we have with some minor improvements with the materials that we're using. We're also raising the gantry height, the overhead steel beam to account for changes in vessel design, the height. Some high king tides, right, are impacting our services as well and being able to move those large tractor trailers under the beam. We're going to go with simple. We've learned our lessons. Very similar. You'll hear other presentations. Some of you have heard the vessel electrification presentation as well of, that's great. We want to do well for the environment, and we want to have a potential hybrid system in place for the ferry division. But our employees have to come along with us. And how do we make sure they can get the training and opportunities to maintain and operate not only the vessels, but the ramps now as well. So trying to do a hybrid approach during these projects to make sure that we're still meeting goals, still being forward-thinking in our kind of technology, but making sure it's not overly done. So that brings us to the Southport area. I don't have a picture really for this one. You saw the vessel there. A commuter route, 50-50. A lot of tourism in this area going over both really Fort Fisher and Southport are great places to visit. A very busy route, our second busiest route in the system actually. And so that is one area we have done a redesign project. We're kind of redesigning it again to make it a little bit more user-friendly for our staff. But again, just one of those lessons learned. And so kind of to wrap it all together, our like cute little name here, the Life Raft Reminders. We talked a lot about communication. You all do it with your staff, in your project teams, locally, etc. And you all do this, I'm sure. But the point of this presentation was you have such a different demographic and use base that you have to strategize and change your approach for those communities and those stakeholders. We talked a lot about the future of environmental changes, raising those gantry heights to make sure you're accounting for those king tides. Vessel design changes are going to happen over time, making sure you don't have to go back in a year or two to redesign something because you didn't think of it in the moment. And then risks and opportunities, community involvement. We've got a lot of people that live right next to these terminals. And so we've got newsletters going out. We've got a text system in the ferry division where you can sign up, and we're going to be spreading and pushing project updates so everyone is aware of what's happening, what's going on. So if they see this big crane coming down the road and they're like, what the heck is happening? They should already, hopefully, know. Not everyone will get it, but a lot of forethought and just trying to push that awareness about the projects. And then continuity. We talk a lot about this in our vessel design, but if each ramp is different, then I've got a huge warehouse of inventory to account for. Not every ramp is the same on how you're going to approach the repair. Trying to have those ramps in a similar design and fashion so that it's easy to pick up the materials you need. You kind of have an idea for what's going on because they're all kind of similar, and you can make those repair and maintenance changes pretty quick out in the field. So that's all we have. Do you have any closing comments?
No, I think we're right on time.
Awesome. There you go.
Thank you.
You might need to exit out of the. All right, we're going to switch over to the presentation from the rail division, and I just want to remind you guys that at the end of this, we will be posting the QR code for the PDHs for this afterwards. It was the S-line pre-construction. That's it. So, all righty, here you go. And I think this is the only good mic we have right now.
All right, good morning. All right, I am Troy Creasy. I'm representing the Rail Division for NCDOT. This morning we're going to be talking about S-Line, Raleigh to Richmond, pre-construction updates. Just one thing I wanted to lead off with. Several weeks ago, we got a request for cool projects, and that request came out a few different times. And sometimes, point of that is sometimes you forget that the stuff we work on here at DOT is really cool, and we take it for granted. And, building a high-speed, high-reliable rail line that connects us to the Northeast and changes the way we travel is extremely exciting. Kat and David's presentation on ferries is extremely exciting. We're doing some really great, exciting things here sometimes. Anytime I'm able to talk to people about what I do, it comes off sounding extremely interesting, and folks are like, wow, you're really doing all that? And to me, you know, when you do it every day and you're in it, and when we're in it collectively, it feels like a job. But it really is amazing, some of the things that we're working on. All right, so getting into the presentation, what we like to do is talk about the different types of passenger rail service. North Carolina has elements now in Charlotte now of all three different types of rail. You guys will notice here, the top one is intercity passenger rail. So think Amtrak. That's your long distance rail. Generally, you'll have a station every 10 to 20 miles. Some are more spread out than that. That is, the basis of what our project's for is for the expansion of Amtrak within the state with an improved connection to the Northeast. On those trains, you'll have baggage food service. I don't know if you guys saw it, but recently we had a combination of two long-distance rail services that will now connect Miami to Chicago on the new Floridian. You already got a ticket? All right. We've got some swag for you after the presentation. So, fantastic news on that, and there's more to come on that. Commuter rail. This is something that we haven't had in North Carolina, though Charlotte's recently come out, and they've had some big advancements now with their negotiations to advance commuter rail. They have what's called the Red Line, which will connect uptown Charlotte to the Lake Norman area. And they're moving forward with the acquisition of the rail line to make that successful. So commuter rail is a little bit different. That is typically a rush hour service to get people to and from work, though that's been reimagined throughout the country as commute patterns have changed due to COVID, where folks are moving more to a everyday weekend service so that folks can use commuter rail for things other than going to and from work. NCDOT, what we're doing is we're supporting the development of commuter rail and making sure that it integrates well with our new train station in uptown Charlotte Gateway Station. And last but not least is light rail. Light rail is separate from the National Rail Network in that typically where you'll see light rail, if anyone's been to Charlotte, the Blue Line, it's a great example of light rail. That really serves more of your dense urban areas with multiple stations per mile where you can get some really dense TOD developed. And Charlotte right now, just as information while we're talking about it, it's looking to expand light rail with their Silver Line from uptown Charlotte to the airport. All right, so this is North Carolina's rail network today. Just pay special attention to the rail line between Charlotte and Raleigh. That is what's known as our Piedmont corridor, where we currently run 5 round trips between Raleigh and Charlotte, with one of those round trips going north to New York, the Carolinian, as well as a few intercity, a few long distance rail lines, which you'll notice the Silver Star that goes through Hamlet and Southern Pines, through Raleigh and up to New York, and the Silver Meteor, which follows the I-95 corridor north through Fayetteville and Rocky Mountain to points north. The hash line there is actually Amtrak's bus service, which provides connections, daily connections from Wilmington, Morehead City to Wilson. So, a lot of folks don't know about Amtrak's bus service, but they do have a bus service to expand their reach so that more people have access to rail service. Not mentioned, but Winston-Salem also has this connection as well through PART. Okay, there has never, we're calling this a rail renaissance right now. There have never been more people riding the train in North Carolina than today. We are already on schedule to have the highest ridership that we've ever had in our history, following last year, which was the highest ridership that we had in our history. We've really seen an expansion of folks that are using the train post-COVID, that are looking to get off the roadways and take advantage of this great system that we have here in North Carolina. And that's not all. So I just showed you guys the existing map. If you look at this map here, we're looking to expand passenger rail in North Carolina to all corners of the state. We were successful in applying for the Federal Railroad Administration Corridor ID program, which looks to create a pipeline that improves existing rail lines, creates high-speed rail, and also brings rail to places within the state that have not had it historically. So if you look at the map here, pay special attention to Asheville. There's an Asheville to Salisbury line, which will allow connections to both Charlotte and Raleigh there in Salisbury. Also, we have Southeast Passenger Rail through Goldsboro and on to Wilmington. Both of those lines are included on Amtrak's 2035 map. It's been on their radar for a long time. Also, pay special attention to Charlotte to Kings Mountain, which would expand rail service to the western suburbs of Charlotte, Raleigh to Fayetteville, which would actually create, a lot of folks don't know, but Fort Liberty is one of the largest military installations in the world. So this actually connects them to the national passenger rail service and also to Raleigh with the additional lines that we're going to have. So a lot of excitement around that. Raleigh to Winston-Salem. Winston-Salem is the largest city in North Carolina that does not currently have intercity passenger rail. We now have a pipeline to start the planning process to bring rail there. And Charlotte to Atlanta high-speed rail. So this would be 220 mile per hour high-speed rail. It's very early in the planning right now, but this actually is the first step towards that planning process. So, what are we looking to do with the S line, Raleigh to Richmond? If you look at the rail network here, our neighbor to the north, Virginia, has a robust, they're the southern end of the Northeast Corridor, where they have a robust passenger rail system. And what we're looking to do here in Raleigh is create a new direct rail line connecting downtown Raleigh to downtown Richmond, allowing our existing Piedmont trains from Charlotte to Raleigh to proceed north. And what this is going to do is create multiple trains per day that improve the commuting options to get to the Northeast with higher speed rail, more reliable, where we're not sharing our rail line between Raleigh and Richmond with pass and OFI freight. We will have the priority for these movements on this line. So what this will allow us to do is going to allow us to get folks out of cars, and this is going to be really competitive with airline travel between Raleigh and D.C. A lot of excitement around this. As I've shown you guys on an earlier slide, we're already having record ridership in North Carolina. Virginia, too, is having record ridership within their state. Our project looks to connect those two systems. So what have we done so far with preliminary engineering? Photogrammetry is complete in North Carolina. Our terrain models for Wake and Franklin County are complete as well. This is significant because the first part of our project that's funded for construction from downtown Raleigh to Wake Forest is fully funded. So advancing the design to get us into construction sooner for that segment is critical for the success of our project. Vance and Warren County terrain and final surveys are anticipated for December of this year. And right now, we've been successful in coordinating with flagging with CSX. I don't know for those who know in this room how difficult it can be to coordinate with the Class 1 railroads. We have found success for this project in having them support flagging activities for over 60 miles of rail with multiple teams. A lot of that has come from trust and the support of the railroad and helping to make this effort successful. Final designs in Virginia, who's our partner on this project, are going to be procured soon. And right now we are working on roadway and railroad design 30% in North Carolina with what once was 5 prior to the trans system and Gannett-Fleming merger is now four designers for 5 segments in North Carolina, and actively working through NEPA reevaluations. As you guys can imagine, with our record of decision for our environmental document coming back in 2017, a lot has changed in Raleigh and Wake County and into Franklin County. A lot of new things have been built, including, in some cases, we have a private school that's been built right in the middle of the alignment. We have a factory that's been built in the alignment, and we're having to tweak some of our designs to address some of the changes that we've had in our corridor. Someone mentioned it in an earlier session, a lot of new roadways get built in places that are high-growth corridors. The same can be said for our project. We're putting our rail project in the midst of one of the fastest-growing places in the country. It has been for the last 20 years. The Federal Railroad Administration is looking at an improved connection to Raleigh and the points north through our project. And again, with the success of this area comes with its challenges, but we're working through that with our reeval process. Utilities Fast Track. Fast Track project, that is our project to coordinate with Duke. As you guys can imagine, Duke is everywhere from downtown Raleigh going north to the border. So how do we coordinate better with Duke to expedite and streamline our coordination so that we're able to get ahead of this and have a good working process with Duke. They've been a good partner so far, and we're looking forward to that continued coordination. And right-of-way acquisition. Right-of-way acquisition is huge. We have $500 million worth of right-of-way acquisition to tackle within the upcoming years. And, how do you do that? We're working closely with the right-of-way unit to work with consultants so that we can look to procure this right-of-way as quickly as possible. But it's certainly challenging, and it's something that's come up. We've been successful in doing some right-of-way acquisition in advance, but certainly is going to be one of the biggest challenges of this project as we look to build a great separated rail corridor in a dense urban environment. So we're funded for construction. So what's changed? This is not the same presentation from last year. We've won $1 billion since the last time we met in October and talked about this project. That's huge. That was one of the biggest grants nationally that went out for rail, and it's the biggest single federal grant that NCDOT has won. Very excited about that. So what does that get us with this project? What does the $1.37 billion get us? That is a fully grade separated corridor from Maynard Road in Cary to downtown Wake Forest. Just take note of the grade separations that are coming from this. I think a lot of the folks in this room are familiar with these roads and where they cross the rail. Maynard Road, Trinity Road, and Cary, Wolfpack Lane, New Hope Church Road, which is going to let here this month, Millbrook Road, which is going to let next year, Gresham Lake, right there just north of 540, Durant Road, let back in July of this year, and then Ligon Mill Road and Holden Avenue in Wake Forest. These are some of the busiest at-grade crossings in North Carolina that will be separated from roadway traffic, and that potential to have a collision is going to be eliminated with these grade separations. 5 miles of roadway corridor work. This is very much not solely a railroad project. This is very much a roadway project as well. 5 miles worth of roadway work to mitigate the closures of these at-grade crossings as we improve the roadway networks around the areas where we're going to be grade separating. And last but not least, we're going to be improving or building on new location 18 miles of rail corridor. So this is going to involve replacing the rail in existing areas, replacing the ties, super elevating railroad curves. This is going to be installing a modern signal system that can accommodate higher speeds. So again, you don't have to wait long to see activity associated with our project. As I mentioned earlier, Durant Road let back in July, and we're letting New Hope Church Road, extremely busy, dangerous crossing. We're going to be letting that grade separation here this month. Millbrook and Rogers are going to let in 2025. And again, these are the leading construction activities associated with the project. We're very excited. All right, again, we are building one of the most technologically advanced railroads in the Southeast, 110 mile per hour passenger rail speeds, though Amtrak has asked us to go faster where possible. Roadway grade separations, this is a completely grade separated rail corridor. For those who don't understand some of the safety issues that come with at-grade crossings, unfortunately, despite having, the crossings in North Carolina, we have more crossings that are signalized as a percentage of total crossings than any other state that does not have commuter rail. So we have an outweighted amount of crossings that we've already done the work to add flashing lights and gates. Unfortunately, we're still having issues where we're still having collisions with people that are going around the gates. Anytime someone goes around the gate and there's a train collision, that not only are we dealing sometimes with the loss of life, but we're also dealing with equipment damage, delays to both our passenger and freight trains. And anytime you have a passenger that's sitting on one of these trains that's been involved in one of these collisions, despite the fact that it's not the fault of the train conductor, sometimes that experience one time is enough to, have folks think about taking a different mode of transportation. So when you talk about reliability and safety, having a completely grade separated corridor is very unique. There's not a grade separated intercity rail corridor in the Southeast United States. So we're really taking a lead on safety when it comes to this. Concrete cross ties. So what that means for the audience here, that's going to be a more reliable, smooth ride. When you have concrete cross ties with the lighter weight passenger rail equipment, it's a really smooth ride. So thinking about drinking a cup of coffee, working on your laptop, or having a conversation with friends and family on the train. Today you go over a switch, you go over certain parts of the track, and it might rattle your teeth sometimes or be noticeable. With concrete ties, you're going to get an extremely smooth ride. High-speed switches. So today, on a majority of the rail lines in North Carolina, with the exception of the line between Raleigh and Charlotte, the highest speed that you can go through a diverging turnout is 45 miles per hour. Our project's going to allow diverging movements to travel up to 60 miles per hour. What this means is for freight trains and passenger trains that are clearing up for one another, they'll be able to get in the siding a lot quicker with less delay. High-level platforms. This is something that's unique to the Southeast. We're going to see more and more of these. But when you have a high-level platform, for anyone who's ever taken a train in North Carolina, a lot of times there's a small step to get on the train cars today. That, depending on the situation, if you got somebody in a wheelchair, we have to use a wheelchair lift. Or if you have someone who's elderly, there are some challenges sometimes getting folks on the stool, walking up those stairs to get in the rail car. For anyone who's been at Raleigh Union Station, they know how much simpler the boarding process is when you have a level boarding platform, and how great it is for folks who are non-ambulatory in wheelchairs and other issues trying to get on the train. It allows folks to easily walk on and off without the issues, and they're able to, your trains are able to dwell less at rail stations and get on with their travel. So a lot less potential for delays that come with running our trains. It's safer and it's a better overall experience. Freight bypass tracks. So one of the things, this is actually related to high-level platforms. One of the reasons why you don't see high-level platforms as much in the Southeast is any place there's a existing freight line where there happens to be a passenger station, think Selma, Rocky Mount, Greensboro. The freight trains can be high and wide, and sometimes their envelope is too wide to accommodate a wide platform, meaning that if the freight railroads who own many of the lines across the state now. We're running a shipment that was too wide. It have the potential of striking a high-level platform. So what we've done is we've built bypass tracks for the freight trains so that they can go around, and that allows us to build high-level platforms without removing freight traffic completely from the line. Positive train control. Again, this goes back to safety. Back in 2008, it was mandated that positive train control be installed on all passenger and freight locomotives of lines of significant traffic. What this does, this actually has the ability to stop a train. If a train violates a speed, if it doesn't sound a horn for crossing, if it doesn't come in prepared to stop for a signal, this software now knows exactly where every single train is, how fast it's going, and its braking characteristics, and has the ability to stop a train. Our line 2 will have the same technology. So when you look at some of the high-profile derailments that have happened over the years, there was one in Seattle, in the Seattle area, a few years ago, where a train went above the approved speed and went off a rail bridge on top of I-5. You've had a high-profile derailment just north of New York City, where a train engineer exceeded the speed of the curve, and there was a massive derailment with folks on board. These are the types of incidents that positive train control PTC is meant to avoid. So our line, again, with this PTC, this just adds an additional layer of safety to make sure that folks get from point A to point B safe. And advanced signal systems. Again, this goes with supporting a 110 mile per hour passenger rail line. The signal system needs to be able to accommodate those speeds. So S-line development, it embodies where we're headed with transportation. So we're not just building a rail line, we're changing the fabric of communities. We're allowing the communities that our project will be in to develop what's called mobility hubs. With a mobility hub, this isn't just purely a train station. This is long-term land use planning to better position communities to have multimodal options around the potential train stations or train stations within their communities. So this is literally positioning all communities along the S-line to have some level of train service in the future, and in the interim have a better level of multimodal options so that they can get around their communities easier. Don't want to leave off this slide without talking about economy and what this project means for so many of the disadvantaged communities north of Raleigh. With the S-line, this is going to change commuting patterns and provide opportunities for folks who don't have access to high-paying jobs today in some of the northern counties of North Carolina to be able to get on a train and have better access to higher-paying jobs. And in the inverse, folks will be able to leave and travel and visit some of these smaller communities from Raleigh and patronize some of the businesses within this community. So this is really looking to boost the economic vitality of the communities to the north as well. So again, mobility hub planning, transit-oriented development. If you look at this slide here, when we talk about a mobility hub and we look at reimagining the land use planning, we're really looking at and working with these communities in the integrated mobility division, partnering with the rail division. We're going out, we're doing the work to work with communities to make sure that our project really adds a real benefit, but not just strictly from a planning standpoint. We're going after money. We're going after grants to actually fund these projects in these communities. And we've had some success, which I'll get to in the next slide. A few slides down. In fact, let's start here and we'll have to back up, because this is important when we talk about the money that we're bringing to these communities to help them plan and develop these mobility hubs. We've been successful. We've had a $3.4 million raise grant from USDOT We've had an FTA TOD study grant, $900,000, which is complete and helping with the planning. And you'll notice here, we've talked a lot about Raleigh to Richmond, but when we look at long-term planning, communities like Sanford and Apex to the south, which aren't currently within the portions of the Raleigh to Richmond project, we're also working with those communities to better position them for future TOD opportunities with passenger rail as well. So what's the schedule? We've got a lot to do in a short amount of time. So right now, we are currently working through railroad agreements and the NEPA process for Raleigh Union Station, the Capitol Yard. That is our rail facility where we maintain our rail equipment just north of downtown Raleigh. We're looking to get obligation of a portion of the $1.09 billion Fed-State Partnership grant here within the next month or so. We're working on corridor agreements with the stakeholders. So these are agreements with the railroad stakeholders. So in our case, we have Norfolk Southern, CSX, and the North Carolina Railroad Corridor Company, excuse me. And we're also working through NEPA and the reavals that are necessary as the conditions of our project corridor have changed over time. Moving down, as I mentioned earlier, Durant has let as of July 1st, and followed by that later this month, we're going to be letting New Hope. Followed by that, Rogers Road to the north, and then finally Millbrook Road will let at the end of 25 and early part of 26. Right now, we're going through design review by railroads. We are within the 30% design process. And right now, we're also actively completing surveying, though as you look at the schedule here, there are some activities to the north that are, when we talk about surveying, we're talking about everything from Raleigh to the state line. So, some of the survey products are going to be complete at an earlier date than some of the ones in the northern counties. Right-of-way acquisitions, we're going at it hard, and we hope to have that mostly complete by the end of 26. And utility relocations are going to be ongoing, hopefully coming towards, wrapping up towards the end of 28. And then hopefully we hope to have some of the first rail construction activities here starting in 2026 with our schedule as of today, operations to Wake Forest in 2030. So this graph right here is a little bit different. It shows a lot of the smaller, they're large projects into themselves, but as they make up this program of projects that we're working on right now, just want to pay special attention here to the grade separations, which we look where they've been advanced substantially. All of them are either in construction or right away. The mobility hubs, again, this is the transit-oriented development. The highlighted communities that you see there, Norlina, Henderson, Wake Forest, and Sanford have had NEPA completed, and we're seeking additional funds to advance those mobility hubs. And, new to a lot of folks, recently included within the scope of the project are the grade separations there of Trinity Road and Maynard Road and Cary. So we've talked a little bit about money. We've been very successful. The federal government views Charlotte to Washington, the larger rail corridor, as one of the highest priorities for the expansion of passenger rail in the United States, in addition to the Chicagoland expansions, Northeast Corridor expansions, and California high-speed rail. Again, $1.09 billion for the Fed-State Partnership Grant. A lot of excitement, but with a lot of excitement comes a lot of responsibility. We're doing all the things we can to support that and get that moving as quickly as possible. All right, so next steps. New Hope Road, we're advancing that this month. We're looking to expedite Raleigh to Wake Forest final design. So you guys saw operation by 2030. We don't necessarily get there from traditional design bid build, so we're looking at all options, different ways to deliver the project quicker. Final agreements between NCDOT and the stakeholders, CSX, Norfolk Southern, North Carolina Railroad Company, and continued intentional coordination with the industry. That's a part of this right here today. Communities, we're going into communities all the time. That's how we're getting the support. We've been in the communities since the early 2000s, and we will continue to be as we plan together. Virginia, that's the other side of the project. Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, we're partnering with them as we look at designs, and we have a standard design going into Richmond. And other key stakeholders, City of Raleigh's huge. Didn't mention City of Raleigh, but a majority of the projects in the City of Raleigh, we're coordinating with them as well to make sure that we're syncing their projects and priorities with our project to make sure we have the least amount as possible conflict points, and we leave Raleigh a better place. We're going to continue preparation and submittal of grant applications for next construction segments. That's something that people ask me all the time when I travel. Why is North Carolina so successful? Why do you guys keep getting money? And the simple answer is we apply for everything. All right, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, I'm going to post up here the QR code for the PDHs. I'm also going to bring Matt Lawford to the front. He's going to do a blessing before everybody gets to go eat, which we're all waiting on.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Just a quick announcement. Just to let you know that it's going to be crowded in there, but Terry said, you may make a new friend, so there's plenty of spots in there, and just please look for a seat. So. But if you guys would pray with me real quick. Heavenly Father, we adore you for your boundless love and infinite wisdom. We thank you for the food provided today that sustains our lives and provides us with strength. May it be a reminder of your goodness and your abundant provision. As we gather together in fellowship, we are grateful for the opportunity to connect with one another and share in this meal. May it strengthen our bonds and remind us of the importance of community and the people we serve. We pray for those who have been affected by Hurricane Helene, that you would provide them with food, shelter, comfort, safety, and hope. May your love and mercy be evident in the lives of all who have been impacted by this disaster. Thank you for your faithfulness and your provision. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you're dismissed. Thank you.